So I think a lot of us have lost the ability to be wild and have lost kind of our connection to our land. You know, it's so easy for us to be in a city and have everything that we need at our fingertips, right? I mean, you can go to the grocery store and buy any type of food that you need. Those things are great, right? I mean, those are wonderful things to have, but we've just lost kind of having a connection to our food and how it's prepared and where it comes from. And also just, I guess, the importance of the land that we live on. I think we've been just a little bit careless in terms of taking from the land instead of, giving back to the land. All of that's just been really fascinating for me. And I think that's something that traveling can provide for you, is a sense of kind of coming back to that understanding and kind of feeling a little bit of what our ancestors felt. And so, just a good example, and one I already said, was like just down in Baja, we took with us the water that we needed for that trip. We took down a limited amount of food, and then we were just kind of forced to be creative with living off the land. And, we fished for our dinner and cooked it on the fire right on the beach and ate that. And eating fresh fish like that is just so delicious. But when you're out in these remote areas, you can just be yourself. Like, nature doesn't judge you for what you wear. You don't have to wear any clothes, or you can wear the same clothes all the time. You can just kind of go back to our wild state that, I think we used to be more like.
This is episode 61 of the Ownstream podcast, featuring Kathleen Morton.
Welcome to the program, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I am Stephen Shelley.
And I am Teresa Scoba.
And this is a very exciting conversation to share with you with Kathleen Morton, one of the OG van lifers, maybe. She's been out there for a while. And obviously van life is dear to our heart, as any kind of devoted listener of the show would know. We've converted a van. We've lived in that van. We're about to do some travel, extensive travel with that in the summertime. And anyway, it's fresh for us. We've been on the road in Costa Rica, as you may know, and we're back here in Southern California in a short-term kind of crash pad cottage, beautiful place we're staying, but we'll be there temporarily, and so we're sort of thinking, what are we going to do after that? And moving back into the van, doing some travel is definitely a possibility.
Yeah, this is a great time for this conversation with Kathleen, because we, just getting back from Costa Rica, where we didn't have the van, and having been bouncing from Airbnbs a bit, it's been, we just got the van back. We had to get a repair, and we just oh my God, all three of us, including Sophia and especially Sophia,
she freaked when she got
we're
in there.
So excited to see the van. It was, kind of has been our longest term home for quite a while now. And we had our lives, our experience as a family, our experience of ourselves, was so enriched and deepened by the experience of being in a van. I think we all just feel so much love and so much so much love for the van. And Sophia just she flipped out when she saw it, and she
baby van.
Yeah, she refers to herself. She refers to herself as baby, or as Sophia sometimes. And so it's baby eat, baby doggy, baby hi baby. I want to say hi to that baby, basically, but baby van. She was not happy when I was about to drive away after Stephen was driving the van. So anyway, we love the van, and it's just having van life as part of our lifestyle has been just, I can't even say enough about it. We've gained so much from it. And you can hear about that on our other podcast. But a great time to be talking to Kathleen as we're thinking about getting back in the van on a more longer term basis to work from the van, which was something we found a little challenging in the past, probably given our Wi-Fi connection.
Sprint, we're talking to you.
And this is not a paid advertisement for Verizon. It just...
Not at all.
It's just Lord. A conclusion we've come to. So we're getting really excited about the possibility, and also finding our Airbnb Wi-Fi signals to be fairly imperfect. So thank you to Krista for letting us use your home today, which has been wonderful.
So Kathleen is, we'll link to her Instagram and her websites, but her journey started out, I guess, kind of in the trajectory of a tiny house, but then kind of like us, as we just learned, we just hung up with her. She sort of realized, like, oh man, the tiny houses are, in many places at least, very tough to manage in terms of getting it on land and septic and all. There's just a lot of details that go into it. Very worthwhile, don't get us wrong. But in her case and in our case, it all of that stuff kind of repelled us in our particular circumstances to move towards a van, and in a big van, in our case a Sprinter van. In her case, I don't think it's quite as big. A Toyota, can't remember the type of van, but nevertheless, and this is not to disparage anyone in the tiny house community.
No, we love tiny houses.
We love tiny houses. And for many people, that's the way to go. And in many locations, it's far easier to live in a tiny house. Here in Southern California, I think it's getting better. And thank you to our friends, the Morrisons and many others, our friends at Tiny House Expedition, Alexis and Christian, who are really driving the movement to more and more place the tiny living ideas in our collective consciousness so that laws change and it becomes easier and easier to live that way. So our hats off to them. But in Kathleen's case, she moved into a van about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. And so she's been living in this lifestyle for a while, and her portrayal of it is a very veteran portrayal. She has a lot of wisdom in the area and a lot of experience, and is doing quite a bit to serve that community, which was very interesting. She supports she helps support, in fact, a monthly gathering of van lifers in all kinds of really cool locations. I think upcoming, there's one in Missouri. After that, they're going to be in the Tetons in Idaho, which sounds spectacular. They'll be in Bend, Oregon, which is a really cool place. Taos, Asheville, North Carolina, really
Great
cool
places.
So that sounds amazing. And her Instagram profile and her is all about her journey. But then she also features stories of van lifers on her website, and that's a really cool resource as well. Not only for the people who get to share their story, but for those kind of coming after this lifestyle, wanting to understand it more. Great, intimate, wonderful portrayals of what it's really like. Instagram gives you a certain view of it, which is the very sexy, kind of attractive, the kinds of pictures that will get a lot of action, a lot of energy, which is certainly part of it. We found that to be a very real part of it. Like,
you do open your back doors onto the beach, and those images are real.
It's just extraordinary stuff. But there's also other issues that are challenges that come with it. For us, the upside dwarfed the downside, and I think many van lifers would agree with that too. So, but nevertheless, the Instagram way of looking at it is one way, but to read these accounts of people doing it, living it, is so helpful for those who are interested in seeking that. Yeah,
I mean, anytime you're going to go off the mainstream path, you might need to learn a new way of living, and I think Kathleen talks about that quite well. She's been somebody who questioned the rules from an early age, and she did something very creative to get started in this lifestyle, which is she just emailed a few people who were renting Airbnbs to say, hey, would you rent me some land in your backyard so I could have a camper, which I think is fantastic. It's just a creative way. We got here to Southern California, we're like, where would we put a tiny house? Where would we put a van? And it's, there's a lot of creative ways to do things, and she is certainly creative. And she's a storyteller. She wants to tell hers and other stories to people. And I think it's so important when you're thinking about making a big lifestyle change. It's different from what you've known and what's different from the mainstream, to know about all these hacks and creative ways to live in this way, whether it's from how you make money, or how that's an ongoing up and down kind of creative journey, to where you go to the bathroom, to where you sleep at night. And it's just as Kathleen says, she's always been okay with being a little uncomfortable to try something new, and sometimes you need to do that to get off the mainstream.
And Kathleen and many others out there, I guess we're included in this, though, in a small way. This whole tiny living thing is a new thing still. It has TV shows, but it's still very, very new. And so there's still a lot being learned and uncovered and discovered and created. And thank you to pioneers like Kathleen and others who have blazed the trail so beautifully. So before we get into the episode, we need to talk about we need to give some shout outs.
Woo!
Yeah, that was the shout. There it was. But we need to get some shout outs to some donors to our Patreon program. We have not promoted this really at all, mainly because we've been focused on a few other things. We've changed our newsletter recently. We've got a YouTube channel, which is doing really well. We've got all kinds of cool stuff happening on Facebook. And, of course, our new ebook, Exit the Matrix, which you can find on our website. But our Patreon is just very tied to this show, the podcast. It's a way for people to support us and help us continue to expand and get the message out more and more and more. Everything kind of helps us create this media. So some shout outs. Our good friend Mark Rubenstein, hailing from up in Canada. And we actually do know Mark. We're not just saying that tongue-in-cheek like our good friend, as a politician might say. But no, we do know Mark. He's a great guy. Thank you, Mark. Thank you to Resha and Stanley. And I don't know how to say your last name. I'm going to say Sabre. Maybe it's Saber. That reminds me of The Office, by the way.
No, we'll have to ask Resha and Stanley about that.
We're going to talk to them on the phone and thank them personally. But Resha and Stanley, thank you so much. And to also our good friend, Dave Trillis, and if we're mispronouncing your last name, Dave, we apologize. But Dave also gave us a nice is supporting the show, and so these are our first three donors, subscribers,
thank you all so much.
Yeah.
It's really like such an exciting. Patreon is just again something that's just like breaking bounds with the way that people make money, and I think that's such a cool thing. And it's about supporting creativity and supporting value and supporting like what really can make an impact on your life and others. So we so appreciate this. You guys, Mark, Resha, and Stanley, and Dave have supported us also in lots of other ways by just being such fans and spreading the message and being so encouraging online. So we really thank you guys for supporting us.
Yeah, if you want to support us, please go to ownstream.co/Patreon. That's ownstream.co/Patreon, or just go to patreon.com and find Ownstream on there. It should be pretty easy. All right. We will be back afterwards with a quick wrap-up, but until then, please enjoy our wonderful chat with Kathleen Morton. Well, let's begin. Kathleen, welcome to the Ownstream podcast. It's great to have you and to talk to you. We have a bunch of topics to cover, but we first learned of you through social media and your beautiful, actually your personal profile on Instagram. The pictures were so exciting, and you portray van life in such an exciting, palpable way, I think, for many people. And we obviously have an affinity for van life, so it was a natural connection to reach out and share your story with our fans and our listeners. So welcome.
Really honored. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I saw the great people you've featured, and looks like you guys are doing some amazing work. I know that it takes so much time to do these podcasts. I have my own, so I'm always like really understanding of people who want to do podcasting, because I get the beast.
Yeah. That's great. Well, I think to kind of kick off the interview, I think it'd be interesting to hear about sort of your early life and growing up, and knowing that now you live a very adventurous lifestyle. You're living in a van. You travel a lot. You have a very vibrant business that you run from the road, so to speak. And so knowing that that's kind of where we're heading, and kind of uncover the work that you're doing and the storytelling in particular aspect, which I know is so important to you. Maybe we could start when you were very young and kind of uncovering the notion of what home meant to you early on. Was it fairly traditional? Was it, the picket fence kind of little house, or what was the home that you found yourself in when you were a child, and what was your lifestyle like then?
Yeah, so I grew up in the southwest suburbs of Chicago, and Yeah, I guess I just, I grew up in, I think we had like a 2,500 square foot house, which now seems really big.
Yeah.
But at the time, I think like a lot of people in our neighborhood had that size, or there were even bigger houses. And so, yeah, I always escaped to my room. I remember thinking that my room was my like little spot to get away and be creative, and my little tiny space. I don't know, that I could just get away from some of the stuff that I was maybe feeling at school or other places. So I was actually like really creative in my little bedroom, writing stories and drawing pictures and whatnot. And I would always meet my friends and I would walk to school. We had a elementary school that we could all kind of like pick each other up by just walking to each other's houses, and kind of we had like a little like I don't know what you call it, but we would just kind of stop along the way and pick up our friends, and then we'd all keep walking to school. And there was a park near the school, and that was kind of like the spot that we would all meet up. Like we would be like, okay, at 4 p.m. everybody meet here, and we'd go to the park and we'd sit under the trees, or we'd like climb on the jungle gym. So, I guess I just remember I loved my bedroom and I loved the park, but I didn't really have like this outside world. My family and I went on trips, but when we go on trips, they were very much city oriented with, an itinerary and trying to go to all the good restaurants or the museums or things like that, which were fun. But I didn't really get like a sense of this outdoor lifestyle that, I have currently. And it wasn't until after I graduated college and I moved from Chicago to Colorado did I kind of get into the whole outdoor scene, and just started hanging out with people that were more adventurous and could take me backpacking or take me mountain biking and things like that. But yeah, it was kind of funny growing up. Like, I didn't grow up in this lifestyle where we'd go camping or sleep outside, with the stars out and at night. Like, I didn't have like this very adventurous lifestyle, but it was still enough where I just felt like I was happy with what I had. I just didn't have a sense of that sense of how big the world was in terms of our public lands and being in nature.
And this creative streak, this creativity that was in you, that was so strong, I feel like sometimes, when we're children, we are really creative, and then we get involved in these systems and they kind of like stamp it out of us. But it seems like it's something that you really kind of cared for and cultivated and nurtured and maintained with you. Is that, I guess, were you in traditional school? Like, did you have a relationship with your family to creativity, or was this something that you sort of like, you did on your own in your bedroom, and you made sure to kind of like keep that going? What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so I think it's pretty interesting looking back, because I used to write a lot. And I don't really know like where that came from. I guess I just always remember wanting to write stories, and I would like interview people in my family and tell their stories, or like we'd make like a play. A bunch of members of my family, we'd get together and like identify who was going to be what, and we'd come up with like this funny play, and I would like pick out the costumes, and we'd like act it out for our family with I don't know, it was pretty silly, but it was a fun way just to like express ourselves and tell a different story, or tell a story of somebody in our family in a different way. So I remember doing that, and I remember just like imagining things. I feel like I had a very creative mind, and I wrote this story of how I had this dog, and that we were like in this underwater world. And the turtle could talk, and the fish could talk, and things like that. The dog could talk. Everybody had a role in this world, and yeah, so I guess I was always dreaming up like new things, and I just found it really fun. That's why like I would go escape to my room, and like, you know, if my parents ever grounded me, it wasn't a punishment because I loved being in there and I loved creating. And then just with everything with the internet, I remember like in high school, kind of exploring a little more about like how I could I guess like communicate and connect with people and share my stories in this new internet world. And so I found a couple websites where I could submit stories, like children's stories and things like that. And I would submit them and people would rank them. I don't remember what that website was called. I don't think it exists anymore. And then I was like on AOL Instant Messenger in these chat rooms, like getting to know people, which my parents were not so stoked about. I mean, in a way, it's really parallel to what it is today. I mean, I think about Instagram and you're talking to a lot of strangers. I mean, Facebook sometimes can be, you know, you're in these groups with people you don't know. So, I mean, this was like just the beginning of that in a way. So, yeah, I was always just really intrigued with like what other people were doing and kind of hearing what they were up to and also wanting to like share my stories. But I don't think I like connected the dots until, you know, later on, until, yeah, just like recently of how I was going to like share that and be a connector to people.
And so when you were younger, you were, it's interesting. There's a kind of the story aspect to your story, like telling stories, but there's also the visual aspect, drawing early on and kind of representing things visually. And now there's a big photographic element in what you're doing. We'll certainly link to the Instagram profiles in the show notes, but you're quite a good photographer, and so you kind of went through, I guess, a traditional school system, as I did, and you ended up in Colorado. Was this for college? Were you going to school there, and did what? Maybe track for us, if you will, the path that maybe the next step, the storytelling began for you. Was this like a journalism degree that you were pursuing? How did this kind of flow from say high school?
Yeah, I think I kind of jumped a little bit. So yeah, I went to high school in the suburbs of Chicago, and then for college I went to a school in Ohio. It's a small public school. It's called Miami University. Yeah. And, I thought I wanted to do business because my parents, you know, were like, this would be a great degree. It has a lot of applications. You can make a lot of money. So I just kind of went along with that and started taking business classes, but I was not doing well. I mean, I was, you know, failing these classes. It made me like sick to go to these classes, to know that I just like wasn't understanding. I remember just being so frustrated because I felt like I was a smart person, but I mean, I would go to these classes and just feel like I couldn't really retain what was going on, or I just wasn't like, understanding when it came time for the test, like how to apply what I learned in the class to the test. It just felt like a nightmare. And so, I remember talking to a friend and I was telling her like, hey, like, I just don't like going to school. I don't like studying. And she's like, oh, I love my stuff. Like, I love going to school. I love like when the test comes, and I'm like, that's weird. And she's like, well, I mean, I found some classes that I like really like, I enjoy taking. And so she's like, why don't you apply for some classes that sound really interesting? Like read the descriptions and, you know, find something and just like enroll in that for your next semester. And so I started enrolling in like communications classes and journalism classes. And then I was really interested in psychology too. Like, growing up, my brother was, or he is autistic. And I just was always really curious about how his mind was working. And obviously it was kind of a struggle growing up with that and trying to figure out how I could be like a good sister and how I could, relate to him. And so psychology really spoke to me because I thought I could like understand a little more what was going on with him. So I started taking classes in psychology. So I eventually graduated with a journalism and psychology, like double degree, so 2 degrees. And then after that, I moved back to Chicago for a bit, and I was happy, but I just didn't I felt like something was missing, and I felt like I needed to go somewhere else and challenge myself and put myself in these new experiences. Like I kind of saw my life flash in the future, and I knew I was just going to be still in Chicago and with the same friends, doing the same things, going to the restaurants on the weekends. And I don't know, I just felt like there was more out there that I felt like there was something else missing, and I just felt called that I need to like go somewhere else. And so I had seen some pictures. I'd been to Colorado before, but like seen more pictures of Colorado on my Facebook feed from people who were out skiing in the winter and like rafting in the summer and climbing and biking. And it's like, wow, these people are like doing stuff no matter what the weather's like. It seems like they're always outside. In Chicago, everyone just kind of went inside in the winter. Like nobody wanted to be outside. And so I was like, I think I should go there and check this out. So I just filled up my car with everything I had and drove from Chicago to Denver, and didn't really know anybody. Crashed on one person I knew, crashed on his couch for a little bit until I found an apartment, and then like slowly just slowly things just like came into place. So when I was in Chicago, though, I was working at a school, and I was using my journalism and psychology degree to work in communications at a school in Chicago. And so I wasn't expecting to get a job right away, but I started applying for jobs, and I got a job at a school in Colorado. So I was pretty fortunate to have a job waiting for me when I moved. That was not what I expected. I thought I was going to figure it out, but I actually ended up moving, and then like the next week starting a job. So yeah, things worked out in that regard. I mean, it was definitely a learning experience, like moving to a new place and not really knowing a lot of people and having to make friends. And then there's the whole outdoor scene, which I was not familiar with. And so it was a little bit of a struggle, actually, like learning what gear I needed. And I guess I'd never camped before. So, I mean, I just had to learn some of that stuff. And people thought I knew it. So they would be like, do you want to go on this trip? And, I just moved, and I was like saying yes to everything. And then I think people were discovering pretty quickly, like, this girl, she's up for anything, but she's never done this before. So people were really great with, showing me the ropes and whatnot. But I just remember like those first couple months, like being really out of my element. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember if you've ever been backpacking, but like your first backpacking trip, I mean, it can be a lot when you're not prepared.
Oh yeah.
Totally. But you were like, you grew up in the city, and I grew up in the country, and when I moved to the city, it was the same thing, just in reverse. Just kind of being baffled by how you get around this complex maze of streets and sidewalks, and good Lord, no one's talking to anybody. I feel weird asking for help. I mean, it's a whole different adjustment. What's interesting to us is how you still did it. You kind of just had this resource in you to just jump into something completely unfamiliar. And even when you realize, like, oh, wow, this is very different, you kept with it. What was it that was kind of pulling you along there? Was it the call of nature maybe, or were you just sort of fascinated by maybe just that it was so different?
Yeah, I don't know. I think in a way I've always just been a little bit different than my friends in the city. Like, I mean, I'm still friends with a lot of the people that I grew up with, but in a way, I think I always felt like like a little more rebellious, I guess, or like wanting to do things a little bit differently. And I felt like in where I grew up, I felt like there were just like a lot of rules, and it felt like people always wanted to play things safe, and do the same stuff that they were comfortable with. And I remember I'd always like test people like for fun and be like, well, why don't we do this? Or why don't we do that? We've never done that before. And it's like, well, I don't know. We should probably just stick to like what we know. And like my friends in Colorado were like, hey, you want to like go on a night hike? And it's like, really? Is that safe? Like, do people do that? Like, like, are you supposed to be out at night? And they're like, yeah, for sure. Like, why not? Let's go do it. And it's like, I don't know. I just felt like I had a group of people that like really got me and were like always looking for fun and new things to do. And it didn't feel like we had to like play it safe or, always like check a rule book that society had dictated to us. Like we could kind of be a little bit more adventurous. So yeah, and I mean, the possibilities just became like limitless. I mean, Colorado has so much to offer, and it's kind of been my home base for the last 6 or 7 years, and I still haven't, I've scratched the surface, but I mean, there's still so much to see and do out here, and it just doesn't get old. And so the fact that like I could be in a spot like Denver and drive like 2 or 3 hours to a beautiful location, be in the mountains, was really cool. Like I just didn't have anything like that in Chicago. The outdoor scene in Chicago might be like a path through the woods, which is still great. I mean, I'm definitely encouraging people right now to just go anywhere they can to be outside, just even an urban walk around the block. But I think I just felt like something was missing, and Colorado was really providing this wealth of outdoor activity and, these beautiful spaces. I just had never really, known that it existed. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, we explore a lot here, like why people kind of do the same. Everybody does the same thing. A lot of people do the same thing, right? These rules you're talking about, these like some written, some unwritten rules that everyone seems to follow, and your ability to kind of like see that there was, open-ended, limitless possibility. Like that's what we see too. And it's amazing to just be able to kind of like open the door to that and see that, oh my God, I can live my life in any way that I want to. I definitely want to get back to like what you found in nature. But I want to ask you, so you're in Colorado and you're exploring all these new things. So what led you to van life? How did you decide to kind of take that path?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting looking back. So yeah, I was doing what everyone else was doing in Colorado. I was working a job. I had an apartment in Denver, and like most people in Colorado, you work during the week, and then on the weekends, you're like a weekend warrior. You're going out and you're going on these adventures. And so, I loved that. I found it a great way to be living, having the city and the outdoor life. But I was dating a guy at the time, and we were talking about how we really just liked being outside all the time, and our apartment was this place where we would sleep and cook a meal here or there. But like we were, most of our time was spent outside of our apartment, and the rent costs were rising in Denver at the time. They're still rising now, but we were looking at that and we were thinking like, oh man, like that's like a lot of our paycheck that goes to paying rent. And then I was also thinking a lot at the time about my environmental footprint in the apartment. Like I guess I was just kind of fascinated with how, I could turn on the faucet and run it as long as I wanted, or take a long shower. And like it just kind of felt like I wasn't really conscious of what I was doing. But then I would go on these backpacking trips, or go camping, and, you bring water for the weekend. And you're really intentional about that. And you know how far your water's going, and you actually like get water from the stream as well, and filter it, and you drink that. And so, I felt like when I was doing these outdoor activities, I was just like feeling better overall about how I was like how I was not really contributing this big impact when I was in nature. But then when I was in the city, I just felt like I was kind of just I was just like using a lot of resources, and I wasn't being intentional about them. And so I was like, well, I feel like there's a way to mix the two. Like, I feel like there's a way that we can live where we can be really conscious about our resources. Like, there's a way to bridge the gap between this outdoor life and this indoor life. Like, why are we paying so much? Maybe there's some affordable housing options out there where, we can use it as a place to sleep and eat, but, we can spend most of our time outside. And so we were fascinated by van life. It was not a big movement like it is now. I mean, we had seen maybe like one or two people, maybe on Instagram or Facebook, doing the van thing or the tiny house on wheels. There was not a lot of people out there doing anything alternative at the time, or that we knew of. And so we were like, well, we don't know if we can do a van. We're working our full-time jobs, and we need to be in one spot. We still have to make money. But then we were like, well, what if we just like look online at like just other like mobile homes? And so we looked, and we found this camper trailer. It was a 1969 Terry travel trailer, 140 square feet. And we're like, well, let's just go look at it and check it out. So we went to look at it, and I stepped inside, and I was like, this is actually not that bad. Like, this is bigger than I thought it would be. Had room to sit. It had a bed, had like a little bathroom area, some closets. So I was like, okay, let's get this. It was $1,800, which was about as much as what rent was in Denver. And so we bought it, and then came the problem of, well, where are we going to put it?
Right.
So we hustled pretty hard, like going around asking people, can we park it in your driveway? Do you have a backyard? Everyone's like, no, that's kind of weird. Then I got on Airbnb, and I was like, well, there's people renting out their houses. Maybe someone on there would want to rent out their land. And so I messaged a family where I was working at the time, and I was like, this is what we want to do. Would you be open to this? And they were like, that's kind of interesting. So they like met us for a beer, and so we talked about it, and they were totally open to it. They're like, okay, we've got this backyard. We think it could work. Like, come to our backyard, check it out. So we like went over there, and then they're like, okay, this is where like we would want you to go. And I think this could be a good thing. So we just like got to work. We leveled out an area for the camper. We backed it in there, and got some dog noises here in the background. But and so we moved out of our apartment, and we moved into the camper trailer. It was a big shift. I mean, we went from 1,000 square feet to 140 square feet. And we were pretty much off the grid. We weren't really hooked up to much of anything. We weren't hooked up into their water. We had a composting toilet. We took out the toilet that was in the camper and put a composting one in. So we didn't have like a septic system. And we still worked our full-time jobs. So we would, get up and I would like pack a bag of clothes. And then there was like this gym right across from the school that I worked at. And so we just go to the gym, take a shower, and then go to work, and then come back and go back to this camper trailer. And, you know, we had to be creative about how we would cook our meals, how we'd adapt in cold weather. We actually moved in during the polar vortex in Colorado. It was like November 2013, and it was super cold, and we hadn't finished insulating the camper yet. And I just remember thinking, like, what are we doing in an apartment right now and turn on the heat and not think about it? But you're really aware, and especially like an older rig like that, like that's not very well insulated, you're really aware of what's going on outside, and you have to make adjustments with when the weather comes through. And so that was new, you know, something I was used to. So we had to get creative, you know, and problem solve together. Yeah. And I remember that first month too being really hard. I mean, I guess just my city upbringing didn't want this to work out. Like I thought it was like a cool experiment. Like my psychology background was like, this could be cool. Like test this out and then see how it goes. But then, I was just like thinking like, I want to like prove to people like there's a reason why people don't live this way. Like there's gotta be. So I like everything that went wrong. I recorded that and like made a note of it. And I was like, okay, yes, this is not going to work out. And then like about a month in, things just, started becoming really easy. And I remember I was having fun and enjoying stuff. We would see some wildlife outside of our camper trailer walking by. And we could hear the rain on top of our roof. Like, so when it was raining, like you knew, when there was heavy winds, you could feel that. Like everything just became, kind of like this incredible experience of being connected, to the elements. You kind of felt like you were outside when you were inside, just because of how thin the walls were and how many windows were in the camper. And, yeah, I just remember thinking like, wow, like I really like doing this. Why don't more people do this? And yeah, that was about the time that I started. I mean, I was blogging, telling people about our experiences, how we were adapting to stuff, sharing our story. There weren't, like I said, like at the time, I didn't really know of a lot of people living alternatively. And so I felt pretty isolated in terms of having a community of people. Didn't feel like there were a lot of people that understood what we were going through, or people we could hang out with that were doing similar things. And so I really wanted to find other people and tell their stories, just to connect with other people. And also I wanted to kind of encourage other people to do this lifestyle, but I just felt like that my story wouldn't be enough to encourage somebody else. Like I needed to find a variety of people doing it, you know, people that were couples, people that were solo travelers, families, because, you know, to encourage a bunch of people to do it, they have to find someone that they're going to relate to. And I was just one couple. Like it was just me and my boyfriend and our dog. And so, yeah, I started telling these stories as a way to inspire more people to live alternatively. And at the time it was super hard to find people. Like I remember I was like searching hashtags on social media and messaging people all throughout the world. And it was really difficult. There weren't a lot of people living full time too. And I really wanted to find these full timers more so than someone on the weekend here or there. Yeah.
What year was this, by the way, Kathleen?
2000, I think it was 2013, 2014, maybe. Yeah, somewhere in there. So, I mean, that's a while ago now. And things have obviously changed. I mean, you can't get on Instagram now, I feel like, without seeing, you know, somebody living in a van or Airstream or tiny house, but I feel like that was just a different time. It wasn't, it wasn't a cool thing, and it was still very new, and people didn't know how to make it work. Especially people who are working full-time jobs. Mm-hmm. So that was another thing too, that I wanted to like tell people, you don't have to leave your full-time job to live this way. Like, this is more of a lifestyle than anything else. And if you want to do this, you can find a way to make it work. So that was another thing too. Like, I wanted to share kind of that perspective.
Right.
A lot of different questions to go from here, actually. But so you started your blog, and that at some point that became your full-time job, right? At some point you did leave your job, and I know some people, are interested in alternative lifestyles and keeping their job, and a lot of people fantasize about being able to leave their job. Mm-hmm. And how do you make money from the road? Like, I feel like that's probably the most common question that we get. When people see people getting to spend, a lot of people have fantasies about spending more time in nature, and I think that calls to so many of us. And then but I gotta make money, dun dun dun, kind of comes in. And how do you do that without having a full-time job? So what happened next for you with this? Like, you were blogging, and how did that move forward for you into a business and lifestyle change? Because I know you moved into a van and started moving too.
Yeah, so that's actually something. Working remotely is actually something I'm still struggling with a little bit. And I think that a lot of people out there that see people on Instagram that, might be doing some sponsored posts or working with brands, they might assume that they've got it all lined up and they've got, all this money coming in. But I think a lot of us that are living this way and working remotely are still trying to figure it out. And we're hustling pretty hard to be able to travel and to live a more nomadic lifestyle and not have to work a 9 to 5. So right now, one of my biggest projects is I'm working on a book, and I am working with a publisher, and that's been a big project that has funded a lot of my experiences and also allowed me to write about other people and share their stories, something I'm already passionate about through my blog and through Vanlife Diaries. And so that was a great fit for me. And then I've also taken on some other projects. I have my podcast, and I have some outdoor brands I've been working with. But I've shifted a little bit from social media and my online presence to trying to do more face-to-face connections. And so we have our Vanlife gatherings that we do. Vanlife Diaries and myself, we host them all over the world, and they're just a great way for people to find their community on the road. And they're these weekend-long events where everyone camps out and shares their passions, and we have live music. We, tour each other's rigs. We'll share stories. People will host workshops. And then we'll also focus on a nonprofit that we feel aligns with our lifestyle. And so we've been working with a lot of nonprofits that have like a public land awareness or, beach cleanups or anything where we can help reduce our impact that we're having. Because obviously as travelers, we have a really big impact when we're driving around and camping on these places. And we want to make sure that we're still respecting the land that we're on. And so that's been my way of making money, but it's not an easy road. It was definitely a lot easier when I was working a full-time job, and we have each month, you get your paycheck, and, that includes your healthcare coverage. And now it's been, some months you might get a project that will pay you really well, and you can maybe travel for a little bit. And then other months you're really you're trying to work really hard to get that next big project or come up with a really great idea that is innovative. I think it used to be a little bit easier for some of us in the lifestyle because it was still a very new thing. And Instagram, I think, used to be a more powerful tool in influencing people to buy products. And now I think a lot of us are seeing it become a little oversaturated with, sponsored posts and a lot of brands are on there. And so I think it's just hard for the average person to navigate through that and figure out what's like a real endorsement for a brand and where something else where somebody, might just be doing it to get a paycheck for that endorsement. And so, it's been, this could be a whole different conversation just in general about Instagram and influencer marketing and things like that. But, I really think that it's more powerful to have a face-to-face connection. And I think these gatherings are just, a beautiful way for us to be in nature, something we all want to be doing as travelers, and then sharing experiences together and finding a community of people. You just can't really get that, you can get that through social media, but you really can't get it in a way that's as powerful as you can at a van gathering.
It's a great service to offer. Another great event is the Tiny House Jamboree, where many tiny housers come together every year, and these are becoming more and more a thing based on what you yourself are describing, which is when you're moving around, you're sort of stepping into a reality where your relationship to community and other people is going to change. And when you made that shift, I think so. You were living living stationary in a camper, and then you made the move to a van. What necessitated that? Did you want to travel? Did you want to see? Did you want to be on the road more? Was it coming from an impulse to move around?
Yeah, so it's actually kind of interesting because when my boyfriend and I were living in the camper trailer in a family's backyard, I think we always knew that couldn't be a permanent solution for us. One, we just knew that particular family probably wouldn't be keen on us to be there for the rest of our lives, and nor you want to maybe live there, forever. And so we had kind of conversations with them, open conversations about what our plans were. And at first we wanted to build a tiny house on wheels. Mm-hmm. And we started researching that. And that's actually why my name is Tiny House, Tiny Footprint, is because that was our initial plan, was that we were going to camper trailer, build this tiny house. And that could be like our long-term home. And we could put that somewhere and get some land, and that was kind of our plan. But as we watched people who had tiny houses buy raw land, we found them going through a lot of struggles in terms of, they had to get septic and water and electricity into the land that they were living on. And then there were regulations that said that you had to have a structure on the property that was permanent and a minimum square footage of like 500 square feet.
Yeah.
Obviously it's different, based on where you're living,
right.
But a tiny house doesn't fit into a lot of the building and zoning codes that counties have. And so, we found some friends that were going through this process, and we saw how much of a struggle it was. Then they had to make, plans for their house. And then, they didn't even want to live in that house. They just wanted to rent that out and live in their tiny house. But then there was regulations that said that because their tiny house was mobile and that their land wasn't zoned for, RV living, that they could be kicked out of their tiny house, like that they, because it wasn't it didn't have a septic system like a normal house did, or maybe it wasn't connected in the same way that made it safe and went through all the regulations that a house went through. And so we were like, that just sounds like a nightmare, you know, to go and build a tiny house on wheels, which is obviously going to be a big investment. And then to end up going through all these hurdles and then maybe finding that, you know, you can't even live in it. Like, what are you going to do now? And so we're like, well, I don't think we want to go that route. And so we kind of scratched that idea and kept living in the camper. But we knew that we needed a place for our camper that could be more permanent, because we knew that we just couldn't live in this family's property. And so with the money from working the full-time job, I was able to buy a house with a backyard outside of Denver. And so we moved the camper trailer to that. And then we started renting out that house on Airbnb. And as we were going through that whole process, we thought it would be so much easier to get someone in there full time. But also I was transitioning my work into remote work, and we were kind of parting ways at the time as well. And so with all that happening, I decided that I wanted to live in a van. The people we had lived on their property, the family that we had lived in a camper trailer on, they gave us their 1987 Toyota van that they had. They wanted to just like bring it to a junkyard. They weren't interested in it. And so we took it, and I just wanted to see what it would be like to try to work on the road a little bit and do what we were doing already, but just on a more mobily. And I also wasn't sure, you know, if I could live on a camper trailer legally on my property, just because I had seen all this stuff going on with tiny houses on people's land and things like that. And so I just thought that van life seemed like a better fit with everything going on. And so I started solo traveling in that van, and yeah, it's been a kind of a crazy adventure. Went through a couple vans. A lot of vans I was in were not mechanically sound, and I didn't know anything about fixing up vans at the time. So I had some pretty crazy times, just breaking down all the time, running out of gas, all sorts of things. But yeah, I mean, all those vans has led me to the van I'm currently in, and feel like this is like the first time where everything kind of fell into place. And I think it's just a good reminder, like when, you know, people are always wanting an instant fix, like I feel like, and people always want to know what they can do to like live this way. And my whole thing has been a journey. I mean, it's been like, you know, a 4-year journey from a camper trailer to 2 other vans to this van. And so I don't think that I maybe could have done it as well or figured it out as well if I had just jumped from an apartment to this van. I think I needed to go through this process. Like I needed to, you know, downsize to 140 square feet, because for me, going from 1,000 to 140 was a big shift. I don't know if I could have gone from 1,000 to 40. I don't know if I could have worked a full-time job in a van. Maybe. I just think that would have been a lot more difficult with what, you know, just from where we were before.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. Like you know, you're consciously you're consciously choosing your home. You know, like you're consciously trying to move out of what you know, question at least, right? Like what you grew up with and what doesn't resonate, and you're in this search for like, what's the type of home I want to live in, and how do I want to live in concert with nature and the world, and what feels like the right rhythm for me, and what feels like the right size and lifestyle. And, you know, a lot of people don't do that. You know, a lot of us, like we we go with what we came from, you know? And so it makes sense that you've been on a journey of exploration with that and finding so many, finding challenges along the way and also finding adventures. And I'm just curious. I'm curious about, like, you know, what have you, from all of this shifting through your journey, you know, and finding different homes and being in different places, like, what has felt most like home to you? Like, what have you found in terms of, like, what makes a home to you? And then maybe you could tell us a little bit about, like, a day in your life now.
Yeah, so I think for me now, anything can be a home. I'm not attached to any space, and I think that's a really good way for me to live, because I think once you become attached to your space, you don't want to leave it, or you won't take on a new adventure in a new space. And so just from going through all of that, I just realized that it's less about the space and it's more about what you find outside the space. And so, yeah, I mean, I spend most of my time in my van, and I really spend a lot more time living out of it than I live in it. And I designed my van intentionally to be that way because I didn't want to lose sight of just being outside and having a connection to nature. And that was something I felt a lot in the camper trailer, was that it kind of pushed me to be outside. And, you know, I knew everything that was going on in the weather, and I could look outside, and I just wanted to be a part of it. And so I wanted my van to just be kind of the vessel to get places, but I also didn't want it to keep me from getting somewhere and then not enjoying my time outside. And so, yeah, I think that that's just something I take with me wherever I am. Like if I'm in a tent, that space is obviously, you know, a space to sleep. And then most of my time is spent outside. And then, you know, if I'm at other friends' houses, it's a great spot to get some work done or get in a hot shower, you know, do other luxuries that you don't get in a smaller space. But really, you know, it's not about that. It's about, you know, being outside and going on a hike or finding some sort of nature that's around you. So yeah, I just have a greater appreciation for where I am and what's available. Like I said, you know, I try not to spend a lot of time in cities, but when I am in a city, I am appreciating that there are these urban spaces that I can go to and I can enjoy them. It's a little bit different than when you're on a backpacking trip and there's no one else around and you're, you know, you're enjoying that moment and you can see all the stars at night. Then it might be in the city, but I think that there's still things in cities that we can appreciate just from like taking a walk around the block or going to our local park or, you know, just some of our outdoor spaces that are available. So yeah, I think that home is just kind of whatever you make of it. And just remembering that to be really intentional about the time that you spend outside and not take it for granted that it's like always around you and available. But you should just try to get outside of that space that gives you the shelter that you need for the night.
When you think back to all the places you've traveled and camped or parked, which one stands out to you as being the one that was your favorite, the one that excited you the most, the neatest place where you stayed in the van? You would, you know, for us, we always think about opening the doors, opening the back doors of the van and stepping out into like the Tioga Pass region, just east of Yosemite, and just the sheer magnificence of what we would see first thing in the morning was just so wonderful. When I kind of ask you that, what comes to mind?
Yeah, and I'm familiar with that area. It's gorgeous. I had no idea that there was so much to offer.
Yeah.
Both sides of Yosemite as well. But yeah, I guess for me, the first thing that comes to mind is my recent trip down to Baja. Just like an incredible experience and one that I was a little hesitant to go on just because just being a different language and not being familiar with the area and how they do things down there. Made me a little bit nervous, but once I was down there, I was so happy I went, just because there's these remote areas on beaches with nobody around, and everything kind of looks like it used to be. So what I mean by that is, like, you can walk down the beach and there's just sand dollar after sand dollar after sand dollar and starfish and shells fully intact. And yeah, I just feel like we're just in a different time now, I think, when we're walking around in these beautiful spaces. Like, we don't realize that as humans, we've just had such a big impact on our land, and we've taken a lot from the land, these big open areas, and we've kind of lost sight of what it used to be like. And so Baja was just a good reminder of there's still areas out there that are, not damaged by our footprint, which is crazy because you would think that they would be by now. But so that was like a really beautiful time just to be out there and camping right on the beach. Like I said, we would catch fish and cook it over the fire. And so we were really self-sufficient and also living off the land as much as we could. That was a really cool experience. I don't know. That was that's just one that stands out right now. But yeah, there's beautiful spots all over the U.S. that I've camped at. I really enjoy national forests.
Yeah, we came to that same conclusion. They're much easier. There are less regulations and less people. And they're just so beautiful.
National parks.
Yeah, I think they can be even more beautiful than national parks, in the fact that, like you said, there's just nobody around. And also they're dog friendly, which...
Yeah,
that's the other part. That's right.
Yeah, that's just a huge benefit for me with the dog. So, it sounds like we're pretty in alignment with that.
I wanted to ask you about storytelling, just coming back to that, since that's been a focus of your life. Like, what, we're storytellers too. That's what we do on the podcast. And we really believe strongly in the power of story to touch others, to inspire change in others. Like, can you talk about like what storytelling means to you? And, I know you have a big following on Instagram, like, and I know Instagram's changed, but maybe you could talk a little bit about what what you're doing with storytelling and what kind of change you want to inspire, or what you think people might be getting out of hearing your stories.
Yeah. So I think, the first thing storytelling was to me was the place to create a community. So that was my initial thought behind having this website where I could tell other people's stories, so that they could find people that they could connect with. I could have a community from that, and encourage other people, that there's other people that out there that they could relate to. So that was the initial intention. I think over time, I've really wanted to educate more people about this lifestyle, and also educate them about environmental initiatives that we can all do just to make a big difference out there as travelers. And so I think storytelling is a way to provide that education. It's a way to bring awareness to issues that are going on. And it's a way for us to all take action somehow. So, through my blog, I think a lot of people have been encouraged to take action to downsize, or they've been encouraged to, reduce some of the consumption that they have in terms of, how much resources they're using in their apartment or their house. More people might be inclined to care more about public lands and write their local senators or just try to find a way that they can get their voice heard somehow. Mm-hmm. And so I think that that's kind of so that's kind of where it's been shifted for me, is just trying to have an area where we can all be educated and aware of what's going on, and then figure out how we can become a part of it, or like figure out what our purpose is and everything. So yeah, I think like even if someone does something small, like they get rid of a few clothes that they own, or they limit their water use, turn off the faucet when they're brushing their teeth, or take shorter showers, or I don't know, just little things. If they just do that stuff, I think that's good. That makes a big difference. So that's the hope. I guess that's always the hope when you're telling stories, I think, is that people are changing a little bit, and they're influenced by what you're saying. Mm-hmm. That's my hope. Somebody is impacted by it.
Yeah, and if Elon Musk is listening, or another similar type entrepreneur, an electric van that we can drive for thousands and thousands of miles before needing to replenish, maybe four-wheel drive too.
Honestly, that would be huge.
That would be great.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
So just a few, I think anybody who listens to a van life episode is going to have these kind of questions, and maybe we could just chat about them. But like, if you're not on a public land, do you ever boondock? Do you ever like just park in a city in front of some homes, or in a Walmart shopping? I guess you can do that legally in front of a Walmart.
Yeah.
But do you ever kind of do the boondocking thing?
Yeah, you know what? I'm not. I don't really enjoy it,
yeah.
And I think, I do it for sure. And I think most of us in this lifestyle, we do it when we have to. But I think for me, I would rather drive a little bit farther if I need to find a spot where a little more quiet and not the bright city lights, right. And just a little bit of an enjoyable experience. But yeah, I mean. I would say maybe like 5% of the time I'm boondocking or doing something like that. But the rest of the time, I'm finding those spots that I can have that little bit more of a remote experience.
Sure. And then for the bathroom, do you have anything in the van, or are you using public facilities, etc.?
So I don't have a toilet. I use public facilities most of the time, or like go out when I'm backpacking. You can dig a hole and things like that. But I think I've been learning a lot about just our waste in general and what we should be doing. And so I'm always just trying to make sure I'm educated on like the area I'm going to, and there's areas where you're not supposed to have your waste in that area, that like there's too many people. And so that's very damaging to the land to have that big of an impact of everybody in that area with their waste. And so I always just try to check on that before I go somewhere. And, if you need to bring a bag or whatnot, like you can do that. I have a little Nalgene bottle in my van too. Pretty much just an assortment of all those things.
Yeah, we didn't have a toilet in ours either. We found that to be fine, work out fine. What about working in the van? Do you have Wi-Fi? Do you connect at coffee shops, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so I use my hotspot on my phone most of the time, which is really great.
Which provider do you use? Asking for a friend.
Yeah, Verizon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been on the Sprint train for a long time, and we're about to shift back to Verizon for that reason that you just described.
Yeah, it's been really awesome. I've actually found it to be really helpful in my travels. Even down in Baja, I was able to have, not in the areas we were camped, but when we were just driving around, just being able to have data there was really cool. That was provided by Verizon. And so, yeah, I use my hotspot, and then I go to a lot of coffee shops, public libraries, trying to think, friends' houses. Dog sitting is great, a great way to use somebody's Wi-Fi and use their space. Yeah, so I think just being creative. It has been a struggle, though, because most of the time I enjoy to be in these places that don't have internet service.
Yes,
and so,
yes,
that's the balance. We've experienced that ourselves.
Yeah, so that's just been something I'm just trying to figure out, how I can mix work and play, or maybe do work for a little bit, then play for a little bit. I worked on a farm this past fall from October to December in Northern California, and I was able to take the money that I earned on the farm and then go on this trip down to Baja and kind of just unplug for a couple weeks. And again, it wasn't like a long period of time by any means, but I think that I'm finding more that I want to try to find projects that I can take the money that I earned from that, do it, kind of be like full hands on deck for a period of time and then go relax. Just because it's really hard to get a mixture of both nature and also, you have to be online and be connected. So it's much better if you can be in those places and not feel guilty that you're not checking your email or, doing a social media post or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so I know we're about to wrap up. We have a few final wrap-up questions we have every guest, but I want to ask you one other question. When you were talking about your first experiences in the camper and the sounds of rain and the feeling of temperatures and seeing wildlife, like I just felt like good hearing those things. And I guess I just wanted to maybe end before our wrap-up questions by asking you about, what you would say you found by having this relationship with nature, and what do you feel like you've gained or how you've been changed by that might encourage others to step outside of some of their routines and get a little closer to nature too?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think a lot of us have lost the ability to be wild, and have lost kind of our connection to our land. It's so easy for us to be in a city and have everything that we need at our fingertips, right? I mean, you can go to the grocery store and buy any type of food that you need. You can get, any coffee that you want. You can get a latte or cappuccino or whatever. So, I mean, those things are great, right? I mean, those are wonderful things to have, but we've just lost kind of having a connection to our food and how it's prepared and where it comes from. And also just, I guess, the importance of the land that we live on. I think we've been just a little bit careless in terms of taking from the land instead of, giving back to the land. And so all of that's just been really fascinating for me. And I think that's something that traveling can provide for you, is a sense of kind of coming back to that understanding and kind of feeling a little bit of what our ancestors felt. And so, just a good example, and one I already said, was like just down in Baja, we took with us the water that we needed for that trip. We took down a limited amount of food, and then we were just kind of forced to be creative with living off the land. And, we fished for our dinner and cooked it on the fire right on the beach and ate that. And eating fresh fish like that is just so delicious, and doesn't compare to what you can get at a restaurant. I think it's so much better personally. But you're also outside and you're with your friends and you're doing it all together. And then you're also you're earning your food. You work for your food, and you're using your hands and you're getting dirty, and you just have a connection to where that came from and how it's serving your body and how you're feeling after you eat it. And I think too, just when you're out in the city, and I'm just using the city as an example because there's a lot of people in most cities, you just feel like you kind of have to go along with what everybody else is doing, you know, maybe dress like other people. At least that's what I kind of felt a lot of the time, like in Chicago especially, kind of just going on autopilot. But when you're out in these remote areas, you can just be yourself. Like, nature doesn't judge you for what you wear. You don't have to wear any clothes, or you can wear the same clothes all the time. And you can just kind of go back to our wild state that, you know, I think we used to be more like. And so that's just been a really cool experience, is just kind of like shifting my perspective on like what's right, what's wrong, you know, how each day should be spent. I think that's another thing too. Like, I think in cities, we feel this need that we need to work, you know, long days and have a house, and we need to like do all these things. But then you just remember that that's not really what we have to be doing. That's just like what, you know, might be one of the easier things to do, just to provide for yourself and have shelter and have everything that you need. But that we can be creative in the ways that we're earning money, and it's okay to take time off for yourself, to be idle, to sit in nature, to just enjoy it around you, and don't have to feel like you need to always be working. Obviously, we all need money to sustain this lifestyle. That's like something I talked about in the beginning, is like, it is a hustle and you have to work really hard. But I mean, I think that we can all enjoy it and not feel too guilty, and we can be out of service and actually be unplugged. So that's just something that I feel personally that we could do more of. But, you know, again, maybe it's not for everybody either. It's like a shift. It's outside of a lot of people's comfort zones, you know, to even just camp for a night. Like, obviously my Midwest upbringing, I know a lot of people that would be very uncomfortable. But I want to help people, you know, have these experiences so they realize that they can become more comfortable and they can become enjoyable, or become a lifestyle if you want them to be.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I think, you know, one of the great things that happens when someone hears your very realistic portrayal of what this lifestyle is like is, instead of it being theoretical, they can step into what it's really like, and it's very possible. And what we love is giving people a clear vision of what it's like, so that they understand that if they're not doing that it's by choice. And this day and age is so filled with choice. You can, in fact, maybe there's too many choices, but there's so many ways, alternative ways to going about, you know, the kind of home, quote unquote, that we live in, and certainly something that's excited us. And yet there are certain challenges along the way, but the ability to kind of experience that is such a gift. And you're right that there's a kind of a wave happening of people kind of readdressing these ways of life. And by being out in front like you are, you're doing a lot of the testing for so many others. And it's not only is it rewarding, I know, but it's also a great service to other people who can be inspired by your great example.
Yeah, I hope so. And again, I mean, I don't know, you know, I'm constantly learning, and I'm constantly educating myself on what our impact is as travelers, how we can be better travelers, how we can be more eco-conscious in our decisions and whatnot. So I think that's always good. Like, it keeps you on your toes, and you can be a better steward of this earth if you have that education. So yeah, I mean, just my goal is to just always be learning and helping others learn what they can.
Yeah,
so.
nice.
Cool. Well, we have 3 wrap-up questions that we ask on every podcast, so we'll ask you those now. The first one is, what book or books up to 3 would you recommend that everyone should read? But we've recently expanded that to what resources. So if it's not books, it could be, you know, a video that was impactful to you, or a podcast, or an essay, or what. But what impactful resource or resources, up to 3, would you recommend that everyone check out?
Oh man, that's such a hard one. Yeah, I think I've said this a lot, but right now I'm just really into being educated about our public lands. And so that's like the first thing that I thought of is I know REI has actually been really great at providing articles about especially like our national monuments, Bears Ears and Escalante, and learning a little bit more about what's going on right now and how many acres are being affected and what they might be used for, and what we can do to share our voice if we do not want to see our public lands shrinking. So I thought that was a really good article, just because I think we tend to get a little bit fired up on social media when we see something going on, and then we often aren't very educated on what is actually taking place, or we can't like have a conversation because we don't really know all the details about it. So we're just like, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea, but then we can't back it up. And I think to really shift somebody who's on the opposite side, we just need to be more educated and be able to provide resources or provide the information and facts. And so I've been just trying to educate myself a little bit more about what's happening so that I can talk to people about it. So yeah, just the first thing that came to mind was that there's an REI piece by this woman named Katie Bouet, who's an outdoor activist, and she just wrote about what's going on with those 2 national monuments. So I think there's a lot of outdoor companies that are taking a stand and providing resources. I think Patagonia as well has been doing a pretty good job with providing some good information. And so lately I've been looking to those platforms. But yeah, I'm also reading a lot of van life books. I have some friends that have written some books about their time on the road, like Kit and JR of Idle Theory Bus. Orange's Optimism is a great book about their 6 years on the road. So yeah, that's kind of just where my focus has been, is on the traveling community and supporting their work, and also supporting the work of these outdoor companies that are providing great resources in terms of what's going on with the land around us and our impact.
Yeah, nice. So. Nice. Second question. So let's direct this to a person kind of maybe stuck inside, very, disconnected from the outdoors. But if you could share one thing, Kathleen, one idea or thought for somebody who's really stuck deep in the kind of synthetic world, and someone very, very much kind of inside that lifestyle predominantly, what would be one thing, one idea, one tip that you would share with them?
Yeah, go on a walk. Start small. Just walk around the block and do that every morning, and just you could do the same walk every day and you'll notice something different. You'll feel better just being outside. I think that's the hard thing for a lot of people, is like just getting out there. Like, it's hard. I mean, it can be outside your comfort zone or unfamiliar, or it's not a part of your routine. So just make it a part of your routine. Like, do something small, walk around your block, go to your parks and walk around. Start there, and then, maybe do more of that. Do a couple of those, one in the morning, one after work. Go on a hike. If you're in an area that, you can have some trails that are accessible to you, go on a hike and do that. And then, you can build up from there and, try going out on a trip, go on a camping trip, or if that's too much, then just stay in a cabin somewhere and then have some outdoor experiences near those areas. But I think, it's just it can be a big shift for people that, you know, like me. I mean, not everyone's going to want to go on a backpacking trip and then not be familiar with camping and not have the right gear or resources. So I think you just got to start small and just kind of work your way up to where you feel more comfortable. And then just be around people that can support you and who encourage you in the outdoors. You know, I just felt really lucky that there were people out here in Colorado that took me on these adventures who had already done it before. And so they could help me figure out what I needed and how to best be prepared and just feel more comfortable. So it's really great to have those people in your life.
Those are great suggestions. I remember there were years that I lived in New York City where I didn't even think I could take a 5-minute walk at lunch and would eat lunch over my desk. So I know that it's like, from my vantage point now, I think like, how could I not think I could take a walk? And there were so many years. So it's such a great suggestion, and to have people around you who reinforce that that's a great thing to do. The third and final question is, what are you most excited about in your life right now?
Yeah. You know, that one's kind of hard because I feel like I'm kind of just excited each day. So it's kind of hard to say like something in the future that I'm excited about. I always just feel kind of fortunate that like I'm able to live this way and make it work, and that, you know, there's enough money that comes in that day that can sustain me. So maybe that's like a very not optimistic way of looking at it, but I think it's also just, I've been just very grateful to be living this way. I mean, for me, this was a way to have affordable housing. This was a way to be connected to nature. So I always just feel really fortunate that I can live on the road and travel. Obviously, it's not all easy. And so to get through some days can be really tough, especially when you're solo traveling. Winters can be really hard. I don't have a heater in the van right now. So, I mean, it can be pretty cold. Weather can turn on you. I mean, crazy winds or rain. So sometimes you're just really thankful that you figured out a solution and you got through it. But yeah, I mean, I guess also, I am looking forward to our van life gatherings that we have. Those are always really great ways to see old friends and meet new people. They're incredible experiences. They're always in really beautiful spots. So I love going to those. But yeah, I think just being present and living life to the fullest is so important. You just don't know how much time you have left, and you don't want to take it for granted. And so I'm really thankful that I can live this way for now. Hopefully I can for a while. I'm still trying to be creative of how I can make it work long term, but just thankful that I've done it for as long as I have for now.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Kathleen, before we let you go, where should people, where would you advise people to connect with you online and certainly in person at a van life gathering upcoming, and anything else you'd like our listeners to know about connecting and learning more from you?
Yeah, for sure. So you can follow me on Instagram at Tiny House Tiny Footprint. My website is tinyhousetinyfootprint.com. That's where I share stories and podcasts, episodes, and the gatherings and things like that. I'm also one of the co-founders of Vanlife Diaries. And you can find us on Instagram at Vanlife Diaries or on our website at vanlife.com.au. And then look for a van life book that I am working on that will probably be coming out next spring. So yeah, that's probably all the things.
When is the next gathering? Has that been planned yet?
So the next gathering, which I might actually not be in attendance of this one, but it's in Missouri in May 18th through 20th. And I have my van friends. They're called Nomad Home. They're going to be hosting it in Missouri in the National Forest. And then from there, we go to the Tetons in June. We have a gathering up there on a ranch in Idaho. It's going to be really beautiful. And then I always host the one in Colorado, and that's going to be in July. And then where there's one in Taos, New Mexico, that's new this year in August.
Cool.
And then we're kind of helping out some people at their gatherings. So we got one in Asheville, North Carolina in September. It's a Vanlife rally. That's a really big deal out in the East Coast. And we try to make an appearance at a Descend on Bend, which is a big Vanlife gathering in Oregon. And that one's in September this year. But we're going to have some more events for the fall. We're just still working out some details. But those are really great ways to meet people, have your community, have some fun, and you just always walk away feeling really inspired and empowered and feel good about the way you're living, and feel good that other people can support you in this lifestyle.
That is so cool, Kathleen. Wow, I had no idea there were so many. And, you know, we've been thinking about maybe moving back into our van more full time or something. And so anyway, it's exciting to hear all those beautiful locations where you guys are hosting these gatherings, to think about possibly hooking up with that. So thank you for sharing. Well, it's been so awesome to hear your story about developing this lifestyle and what it's like and what it's brought to you and expanded your life. And thank you for sharing that with us and with others.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate being on your podcast. I'm looking forward to listening to it. And I hope that we can connect outside this episode so I can learn a little bit more about you. And it's so one-sided. But for now, I'm really just thankful that you guys have taken the time to talk to me and let me know what I can do to support what you guys are doing.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, sweet. Thank you, Kathleen. That's it for this week's Ownstream podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this amazing interview with Kathleen Morton. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode for links to everything mentioned, including her Instagram profile, website, and the other resources she recommended. All of that can be found at ownstream.co/Kathleen Morton. That's ownstream.co/KATHLEENMORTON.
Please sign up for our newly revamped newsletter, News for a New Earth, Tools and Stories for an Enlightened World. Approximately twice a month, we will send out a digest of the latest findings and creations emerging from the vast paradigm shift of awakening happening on the planet. Everything from spiritual breakthroughs to scientific findings about the quantum field and consciousness, to the latest in alternative living structures, nutrition and health, cryptocurrency, community building, world travel, and more. Basically, it's the news you actually need. Please sign up at ownstream.co and just click the sign up link in the upper right-hand corner on any page.
Please leave us a review on iTunes. We really do need your help in expanding our reach, helping us inspire more people and spread the amazing ideas discussed on this episode with Kathleen Morton and others too. If it feels right to you, simply go to iTunes, search for the Ownstream podcast, click ratings and reviews, then click that 5th star and leave us a brief comment on how this episode has inspired you. Thank you very much for considering that. We are very grateful. Finally, we're on Twitter and Facebook at Ownstream and on Instagram at own_stream. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Ownstream podcast. To learn more and connect with us, please visit ownstream.co or follow us on Twitter at Ownstream and Instagram at own_stream.